So good evening students and welcome to the next session in our Wipro NLTH coding series. So with today's session, we'll look at a couple of programs that you guys will again, as stated earlier, expect from the math part, the math kind of questions that you guys can particularly expect in Wipro NLTH. So we have already gone through a few programs. That is, we've already gone through primes programs, a couple of fortunate number programs, simple ones with factors and prime numbers. We'll go ahead and we'll look at a program which combines the concept of prime numbers as well as the concept of Fibonacci series. And to solve this program, I will be using C++ instead of C. So my first question to you guys, is everyone familiar with C++? You guys can let me know if you are not familiar by any chance. I'll just let you know how else you can do the same program as well. Okay, many are not familiar. All right, then not a problem. I'll be first solving the same in C, just to give you guys an idea. Following that, we can go ahead and try to work this out in C++. Because I will suggest, if you want to solve these kinds of problems, certain kind of problems, if you know C++, it's always a better thing. Or if you are working with C particularly, you can solve it as long as you have C version 11 or more, because from version 11 or more, C supports initialization in a certain way. So I think I need to close this. Hold on. So the basic idea is, when you talk about C and C++, I'll just tell you guys one difference that not a lot of interviewers or um, textbooks or tutorials, anything won't say. The idea is, in C and C++, when you create an array like array of 10, in both you can create that. In both of them, you can create an array of exactly 10 elements. But when you want to create an array of n elements, where you just give a variable n, it will work in C in some versions. In C++, it won't work in some versions, because C++ particularly states the value you give must be a constant expression only. But in some versions of C, you can state that you can enter such a value. So if you want to know more about these differences, you can just search variable length array in C. Just search this out. You can get any basic link. You guys will get a lot of different links about variable length in arrays. You guys will be able to learn a lot through this. So this, as you can see, I think they have not mentioned. Yeah, here they have mentioned C++ till 11 it does not support. Only after 11 it supports. That is the condition. It should be constant only. So in case of some compilers that are chosen online, you may not be able to create an array of n elements directly. To do that, you may need to use malloc instead. But in some programs, you may not be able to know what is the size of the array until you create the array. The next program we are going to go through is a problem like this, where we don't know the size of the array until we get to know how many elements will be stored. Until we start to create the array, we won't be able to know the size of it. So to do this, I would generally prefer to use the concept of vectors in C++ rather than C. That's one point I need you guys to know. But since we are working with C, let us try to create with an array of a predetermined size anyway. Let's see how to work through this. So the question, before we go for this, let's go back to the previous questions here. So yesterday we gave you guys a few assignments. One of them was, Hirsch wants to find a lucky number for a given number. The lucky number is identified as the difference between the given number and its closest prime number. Were you guys able to try this out? You just need to find the closest prime number, and you need to make sure that you're able to find or write a program which gives you the distance from your current number to closest prime number. So I have one question: how will we find whether a perfect square or not? I'll explain. Sorry, where was the question? Okay, this. Yeah, to the next question I'll go up next. But first, let's go for this question. Okay, some weren't able to do. I'll just give you guys a clue so you guys can try it out at least. So the clue is, if a given number is n, you need to find its closest prime number. So we already have our code here in the previous program where we have found prime number. So I'm going to take the exact same code here very quickly. We'll solve this program under 5 minutes so that we won't take up too much time. So I think I've copied a lot of things. So I think there's something here that I've copied this multiple times. So I just need to probably delete this. Perfect. So let's go back here. Let's delete this. It's not needed. So now let's go for this function. So whatever we have, product of prime and everything, let's remove it. Okay, so here's the mistake. All right, so now let's copy the program, because I think, okay, I think it's not copied properly. So I think this is the last program. So yeah, there's a couple of mistakes here. It's not copied properly, so I'll just delete this. So this was the program. So all I'll do here is just copy the prime of n function. I'll only copy the prime of n function here, because we are only supposed to find whether a number is prime or not. Now the idea here is, if a given number is n, you need to find closest prime number and the distance from n to its closest prime number. Now there are two ways to do it. One way is, you start with n, you find what is the closest prime number behind it. That is, you reduce by 1, then reduce by 2, then you reduce by 3, and keep on checking whether they are prime numbers or not. At whatever minus n value, you get a prime number. So you remember that n, saying that the distance here is from the number to prime number is n behind it. Likewise, go ahead 1, go ahead 2, go ahead 3, and so on, up to some m value where you get a prime number, and find the distance here as m. So whichever is smaller, that is what we're going to print. This is one way. But the problem here is, think about this. If a number is, let's say, 1000 and 1000, let us assume the closest prime number here is 999. Let us just assume the closest prime number here is 1051. Now, if you go ahead first, you're going 50 values ahead to find the closest prime number. Then when you go behind, you're going only one value behind to find the prime number. So you're basically going 51 steps. If you do it the other way, and the number you're given is 1050, you're going here 50 times. You're going here one time. You basically are going 51 times again. So this is kind of a difficult task to do. So rather what you will do is take the number, subtract 1, add 1, and find if any of these are prime numbers. When you subtract 1, see if that is prime number. When you add 1, see if that is prime number. If any one of them is prime numbers, the distance is 1, that is your lucky number. If none of them is prime, then subtract 2 and add 2 and check if any of those are prime. If any of those are prime, then yes, state that 2 is the distance, or 2 is the fortunate or lucky number. That's what we will do. So in our void main function, let me just zoom in. So in our void main function, very simple code. I'm not going to take much time in this. We'll just read an input. So for that, we need to create our variable int n. So after reading the input, we're supposed to find closest prime number to that n, and whatever is the distance, we're supposed to print only the distance. The distance is 2, whether ahead or behind doesn't matter. The distance is 2, we're supposed to print the distance. So in this case, all that we're going to do here is, we'll take a for loop, I equals 1, there is no condition, just I plus plus. So we'll just take a variable I is initially 1. There's no condition because we don't know how far away the prime number is behind, or we don't know how far away the prime number is ahead. So our condition is nothing because we don't know when to stop. So that is why we will not give a condition at all. And in this for loop, we need to check if I is 1, we need to check if this is n, is n minus I a prime number, or is n plus I a prime number? At Naveen's question, see, given an input n, you need to find the closest prime number and the distance from the closest prime number. So that is why we are taking initially I as 1, and we are checking if n minus I or n plus I are prime. If any one of these are prime, then we print the I value as the distance. Otherwise, we'll increase I and try again. Otherwise, we'll increase I and try again. We keep on doing this until we find a prime number. So we have no condition for I here. The condition is they must be prime. So what we will check here is, I have one question. If right side number is prime, then same thing. That is what I've stated. Any one must be prime. Either n minus I should be prime or n plus I should be prime. Any one of them is supposed to be prime. When any one of them are prime, you stop there, you print the distance. Whether the distance from here to here or here to here, the distance will be a positive number, that is 2 or 3, whatever it is. Distance between 1050 to 999 is, let's say, 50. 1050 to 1051, let's say, is 1. So that distance is all you need to calculate. That's all. So let's do that. Our condition here is, if prime of n minus I or prime of n plus I, if any one of them is prime, we break. Break means it will exit the for loop. So the idea of this for loop here, if you guys observe, is pretty simple. I is initially 1. You keep on increasing 1 at a time. First, initially 1, there's no condition. It will directly go within for loop. In for loop, what you're checking is if prime of n minus I or prime of n plus I. You're checking if n minus I or n plus I or prime. N minus I is whatever that n is minus 1. And n plus 1 is what you're checking. If none of them are prime, go back again, increase I to 2. After increasing I to 2, check again, no condition, so go back again. Check if n minus 2 or n plus 2 are prime. If any one of them is prime, then it goes in, executes break, goes out of for loop. After going out of for loop, you can see the distance here is stored in variable I, which is 2. That is what we are supposed to print. Until you find one of those prime numbers, it keeps on repeating. That's the whole idea. So once you find it, all you need to do is printf %t/n, comma I. That's it. That is how you'll get the closest prime number. Now this question, if they ask in a way that find the closest prime number, lucky number greater than 1. If they ask you this kind of condition, like we did in previous question, we have done this earlier. If they ask you these kind of questions, lucky number greater than 1, what change am I supposed to do in this program? Can you guys let me know what change do I do in this program? Simple. I will make it 2. That's it. That's all there is to it. So then you can find the rest of the code. So let's compile this. Sorry guys. Since we are using mat.h, I'll use -lm. Let's execute it with /a.out. I'll give 31. So closest prime number is 2 values away, which is 29. If I give 32, closest prime number is 3 values away, which is again 29. If I give 33, now closest prime number is this correct, guys? For 32, closest prime number is 3 values away, given because we have figured out that it should be greater than 1. Let's go back to our previous program. So let's compile and execute. So if I give 32, closest prime number is just 1 value away. If I write, let's say 34, closest prime number is 3 values away, and so on. This is basically the idea. So I have one question. Why are we not writing conditional statement? This is the conditional statement. If n minus I is prime or n plus I is prime, you're exiting the for loop and printing I. That's it. Until you find n minus I or n plus I is prime, you keep on repeating this loop. That's it. So why are we not writing condition? What condition will you write here? When do you want to stop? Do you know how far away the prime number will be there? Do you have any guess, like the prime number will be from n will be less than 50 values away or less than 100 values away? We don't know. That's why you can't write a condition. That's why it executes infinitely until it finds a prime. When it finds a prime, it exits the for loop. I hope that is clear. That's the basic idea. So there are some questions like this also that you may need to work with. So I hope that is very clear. So I have question when to add and subtract the distance. See, you're not adding or subtracting, you're just finding out n minus n plus I both here. Yeah, as one more person has stated, you can also use while of 1. Instead of this, you can also make I is equal to 1 here. And you can also make this as while of 1. So it is always true. You check if n minus I or n plus I is prime. If prime, break. Otherwise, just increase I plus plus here. You can also do it with while, not a problem at all. Both ways it can be done. So I have one question, when to add and subtract the distance. There's no, see, we are doing both here. I hope that is clear. You're adding and subtracting the distance to find whether the values are prime or not. So this is your simple program for this particular question. We were able to do it under 10 minutes. So it's not a difficult question, but such questions are generally given with your 30-minute long programs as well. So these are some things that are often asked. So you guys need to know about these as well. Again, I'll just point this out. You guys can expect any of the following questions: math or strings or a data structure based, algorithm based problem. You can expect any of these. So about a few sessions are enough to cover these. The rest of the sessions, we need to work on these programs, which are very often asked as well. So that's why we are going through as many of these programs as possible, and hopefully as quickly as possible as well. Thanks a lot at the feedback as well on this program. Now, let us go ahead here, guys. Given a number n, find its closest perfect square. Is this easy to do? Find closest perfect square. So think about this, guys. The question you may expect is something like Adarsh is fond of mathematics and he wants to find he's fond of square numbers. So his teacher gives him a problem like, given a number n, find the closest perfect square to the number n. How do we get to know perfect square? Perfect square is a number whose square root is an integer number. For example, 4 square root is 2, 9 square root is 3, 6 square root is something like 2.7 or something like 2.5 or something like that. That's not a perfect square root. So that's not a perfect square. So that's the basic idea. So I have one question. We can find, okay, we can do this by using square method and repeat the same as before. Okay, you want to find out whether each number before it or each number after it is square. That is one way. Or I will give you guys one more clue. See, you want to find the perfect square of a number, whether a number is perfect square or not. If input is 68 or input is, let's say, 40, you're finding whether 39 or 41 are perfect squares. Then 38 or 42 are perfect squares. Then 37 or 43 are perfect squares. Then 36 or 44 are perfect squares. Here 36 is perfect square. So the distance, the closest square root is 36. So can I calculate like this? My first question to all of you guys. Can I calculate like this? Yes. I would say it is not efficient at all. Here's the thing, guys. I'll just point out one clue. Take any number. They're saying perfect square root closest to it. What I would rather do is, if I get a number 40, what I'm going to find out is, I'll call sqrt of 40. I'll call this function. What will it return? It will return 6 point something. I will store this in an integer. When I store this in an integer, I will be able to find out. Now observe this very, very clearly, guys. Please note this very clearly. I'm storing this in an integer. When I store this in an integer, it's only gonna store 6. When it stores 6, I will find what is the square of 6, which is 36. Then I'll add 1 to it. Then I'll find what is the square of that, which is 49. Then I'll calculate this difference between 49 and 40, which is 9. Then 40 and 36, which is 4. Which is a smaller difference? 4. So which is the closest square root? 36. Can I do this rather? Are we calculating each one if it is square root or not? I have one question. What if it's 6.99? Even if it's 6.99, it's integer stored as 6 only. Always remember that. Integer part only takes the integer part. Integer never takes the decimal part. So can I do it like this in short? It's a better approach. You guys agree? Because we are solving it in much smaller time. Why go through logic which does so many work? So all that we are doing is to find the closest prime number. We are taking that number, finding the square root of it first. After finding square root of it, we are converting it to integer, printing that square and printing the next square. Whichever is closest to the given number, that's supposed to be our square, perfect square closest. So let us try this out. If given number input is n, what's the first thing I'm doing here is calculate the square root of it. So thanks for the nice feedback, is always glad to hear that. Let's find the square root of n. So we'll just take int sqrt equals, not sqrt, we'll just root equals sqrt of, so that we don't get confused. That's why square root of n. Now note, square root will always return in float or double. We are converting it to integer. After converting it to integer, we need to find what is the square of this root. So if 40 is the input, please observe, guys, square root of 40 will be something like 6.4 or something. So out of that, only the integer part is taken and stored in the variable root, which will store 6. Now I need to find square of 6. Then I need to find square of 6 plus 1. So one will be lower square, another will be upper square. So these are the two values I need to find. After finding those two values, I need to find which of the distance is less. So let us find lower square and upper square. So to find a lower square, all I'm going to do is we'll take all the variables, let us create it before scanf as always. Int root comma lower square and upper square. So now once you calculate the root, the next thing you need to figure out is low square. Low square is root into root. That's it. You found the square. Then up square is root plus 1 into root plus 1. So this will give us low square. Since root value is 6, low square is root into root. Up square is 6 plus 1 into 6 plus 1. We have found out both the values. Now that we have found out both the values, what's the next thing I'm supposed to do, guys? What's the next thing that I need to do here? Compare the difference. Check the difference. Absolutely correct. Check the difference between our n and low square and n and up square. So can I just give a condition like if up square minus n, this value greater than n minus low square, can I just state it like this? Up square minus n is 49 minus 40. If it is greater than n minus low square, n minus 36. So if that is the case, you're going to get, let's just write it as if up square minus n greater than n minus low square. If that is the difference, the difference from up square to n is higher than n to low square. So low square is the closest one. So what I will print here is percentage d slash n comma low square. That's it. Else just print percentage d slash n comma up square. That's the whole idea. Is this simple, guys? Is this simple? Now, if this is easy, now I'll show you guys a couple of test cases where we may fail or where we may go wrong in this. So let's compile and run this. When I run this, if I get 40, I get closest square as 36, closest perfect square as 36. If I try 45, I get closest square as 49. Now, let me try the same with one input, that is 36 itself. Is this the closest perfect square? Is this the closest perfect square? No. We did not think that user may enter an input that is exactly a perfect square. If user enters exactly a perfect square, and if you're storing integer part of it, it will also be 36 exactly, sorry, 6 exactly, whose square is exactly 36. So its perfect square will not be, closest perfect square will not be itself, because closest means other than it. So that's the basic idea. So there your test case fails. Another case is, this is the first test case. I'll write both test cases one at a time. First test case is if input is a perfect square. All right. Now let's take the second case. The second case is, so if input is a perfect square, the output it gives is the same input. There is one problem, because we're supposed to find the closest perfect square. I hope that is clear at Sai Kiran's question. So the other problem that we may get here, for example, think about this. There's perfect squares in equal distance. That is, to the left of your value, to the right of your value, whatever you choose, perfect square is in the same distance. If you give 3 as input, it is giving 4. It could also give any other value. Sorry guys, since 2 is not a perfect square, you can take some other value. I think you can take any other value as well. One condition is, if the distance is equal to the lower square and higher square, which are we supposed to print? So there are some test cases that are generally written in question. Sometimes they will give you guys, sometimes they will not give you the test case in the question at all. In question, if they specify, if the distance is same, print upper square only or print lower square only. You need to change this condition accordingly. If they say if distance is same, print upper square, you need to write greater than equal to. So if distance is same with upper square, sorry, I'll just point this out. Observe this, guys, since some of you are slightly confused with this. I'll explain this. See, guys, think that the distance to upper square and lower square is same. So I'm just going to take one example, even though it's not valid, it's not correct. I'll take just one example. Think 5 is a perfect square and 10 is a perfect square. If given input is 7, difference here is 2, difference here is also 2. So, sorry guys, not 10. One small mistake. Let's take 9. Difference here is also 2. Difference here is also 2. Just assume that 5 is a perfect square and assume that 9 is a perfect square. In that case, since distance is same, if they give in the question, when distance are same, print upper square, then you need to make sure when distance are same, when it is equal, when the distance is equal, you should not print lower square, you should print upper square. So equal condition, when it is there, it should go to else part. So that is why we won't use equals here. If they say when distance is same, print lower square, then you're going to give equals here. If they are equal also, you go in if and print lower square. But that secondary condition aside, this is our test case which we should work through. If input is a perfect square. Now, what are test cases? One thing to note, you may create a program. That program may work for almost all types of inputs, but for some particular input, for a particular input, it fails. And they always use those particular inputs for which certain programs, when you do, it fails. They use those particular inputs only in the program as test cases because they try it out as well in the same way. So with this idea clear, now that we know it fails in this test case, how do I solve it? Can I get any guesses? If the input itself is a perfect square, how do I solve it? Think of it, guys. Your input, if it is 40, you can find out that the difference between 40 and 36 is 4. So the difference between the number and its lower square is greater than 0. If it's not greater than 0, then you need to do something else. So what we're going to do here is, after finding lower square, we will check if low square is equal to n. That's the condition. I'll repeat. If your input is 36, then square root of it will be exactly 6. That is what will be stored in root variable as well as 6. When you calculate square of 6, that's going to become 36. When you calculate 36, when you check 36, is it same as the square? Yes. Since it's same as the square, I have one question. If it fails one test case, we won't get the marks. Will it be program will be considered as wrong? See, if it fails one test case and everyone else fails more test cases than you, then you're selected. But if it fails one test case and other people fail lesser test cases than you, then they are selected. So it all depends on that. So that's why I would suggest you to make sure that you're able to make it as perfect as possible. As one of you stated exactly right, if the lower square itself is n, then what we do is, instead of this, we just take low square is equal to root minus 1 into root minus 1. In this case, you don't have to do a lot of effort. You don't have to do a lot of things. You're just calculating at maximum 1, 2, 3. 3 performances. That's it. After this is done, you're just comparing. That's basically it. So this is the basic idea. So you're checking first what is the square root of it. You're first checking what is the square root of n. If the given input is 36, you're checking square root of 36 is 6.000, and you're converting it to integer. In integer, you will only receive it as 6. When you only receive it as 6, you're then multiplying it by itself and getting the square, which is 36. You're checking if it's same as the given number. If it's same as given number, you're going to take 6 minus 1, that is 5. And you're going to do 5 into 5, which is 25 instead. That will be your low square, only in that condition. Let's see if it's correct. If it works, I'll give 36 as input. Now I get 25 as the closest square. So it works. But let me ask you guys one more question. Is there a better way to do this? Can I just check here by storing it in float and writing the condition here as, if root is equal to 6.00000 and 0, and can I check here in this case, if root is equal to 6.00 exactly, then low square I'll calculate it as root minus 1 into root minus 1. Else, low square I'll calculate it as root into root itself. Can I do this? If root is exactly this, I'll convert it to integer. First, I need to convert it to integer and do this. Else, I need to convert it to integer and do this. But there's one problem. in float value, I'll just point it out, in float value, yes, 1, it's not always 6. In float value, you can also check if the decimals or zeros and so on. But in float value, instead, sorry, not 6, I'll take n. Root is equal to n. Can I do this? If root is equal to n, if given, sorry guys, this, sorry, one minor mistake here. Please note here. So I have one question. Yes, for all numbers, it is 0. Can I just state, in other words, think about this. Given a root, observe this, please observe this very, very carefully, guys. Given a root, no matter how you solve this, there's one small condition you guys need to know. If I have 6.00001 and if I 6.00000 and 0, even these may come up as equal in float, because so many of the decimal values will be same. So many of binary values, when you store it in RAM, will basically be same. Some of these values will basically be equal. So you can't compare float values exactly like this. And that can never be done. Those who have gone through our sessions, you guys have seen that we did not ever compare float and float like that in C. And I told you guys the difference, how whenever we compare float to a float value, what exactly happens. I hope you guys remember the problems we had done that long ago. But for those who don't, just remember, float and float comparisons are very difficult to do. It's better to just do this. And this is your simple program to find the closest perfect square to a given number. You don't even need a function. You don't even need anything. After declaration and reading the value, it's only 8 lines of code. Just 8 lines of code is all you need. You don't need float at all. It's an integer. You're getting an integer value. You only need 8 lines of code basically. Now, is this simple and easy to work with, guys? So I have one question. In if condition, that literal float is defined, considered as double. Yes, that is why we don't compare it. That is the exact reason why we don't compare it. That is why we are storing everything as integer. I hope that is clear. This is the reason we are storing everything as integer. All of them are stored as integer for that reason. So this is your simple program to find closest perfect square. Now that we are clear with this, I hope everyone has gone through Fibonacci series. Now let's go on for the next problem or the next interview question. So I have one of you stating that your logic in time efficiency is increasing my confidence. Glad to hear that. The more programs you try through, the more programs you practice, try to go through as many websites as possible and try to keep going through as many programs as possible. Go everywhere and try to work through it. I have one more question. Can we take n as float here? See, I'll state one thing. Sorry, guys, I'll state one thing. If you take n as float, what happens? It can store 40.9. Is that you need to find closest perfect square to 40.9. So when you have a float value here, n as float, you need to convert to n as int, calculate the rest. After calculating the rest, whatever is low square of it, compare it with this float as a float value. And whatever high up square is this, compare it to float as a float value as well. That's the basic idea. So some of you are asking where can we go through practice problems. I'll share a lot of websites by end of today's session. I'll share at least 5-10 different websites for you guys for reference. Not to worry. At least 5-10 websites I'll share. So going ahead here, let's go for the next thing here, guys. Now observe. This is the program I'm giving to you guys. The next program that we're gonna go through, and observe this very, very clearly, guys. Given an array of n elements, of n integer elements, your task is to find all the composite Fibonacci series values of the array. That's it. This is the question. That's all. Given an array, you need to find all the integers of the array which are composite, sorry guys, composite Fibonacci series of that array. So let us start with this from basics. So here, let me take one example. Let's say we have an array of, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now you guys know Fibonacci series. It starts with 0 and 1, and the next number is sum of the previous two numbers. That is 0 plus 1 you get as 1, then 1 plus 1 you get as 2, then 1 plus 2 you get as 3, then 2 plus 3 is 5, and so on. This is your Fibonacci series. Now, given an array, your task is to find all the elements of this array which are Fibonacci series elements, and they must be composite. In other words, they are non-prime elements. That is the whole condition that we need to do. Let's figure out how to do this. So first thing, given an array n, what am I supposed to do first? First, let me ask you guys, have you guys understood the question so far? All right, so that you guys have understood the question. Okay, one of you have stated you haven't, so I'll just point this out. Please observe this. Given an array, you need to check if each of the element is composite Fibonacci series element. So you need to check each element and check if it is composite. Composite means it is non-prime. It should be not prime, and it should be in the Fibonacci series. So there are two conditions. The element should be non-prime. The element should be in Fibonacci series as well. So that's the basic idea you need to work with. So now, is that clear, guys? Is the question clear to everyone? So here, if you observe this, 1 is an element in Fibonacci series, but it's non-prime. 1 is non-prime. So 1 is a part of the output. 2 is a part of Fibonacci series, but it is prime. So it's not a part of your composite Fibonacci series. 3, it's also prime, so it can't be part of your composite Fibonacci series. Even though it's in Fibonacci series, it is prime. 4 is non-prime. It is not a prime value, but it's composite. Even though it is composite, it is not a part of your composite Fibonacci series because 4 doesn't exist in Fibonacci series at all. When you take 5, it is prime and exists in Fibonacci series. So this also is not possible. So only 1 is your output. Are you guys able to get the idea here? So think of this. Fibonacci series, you have 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, and 3 plus 5 is 8. If I have 8 also here, we know 8 is a non-prime number. It is a composite number and it is in Fibonacci series. So it's a part of non-prime Fibonacci series as well. And that is why we are adding it here. So the output you get here is 1 and 8. So I have a question. A composite number is greater than 1. How come? Sorry, guys. Yeah. See, composite numbers, yes, of course. We don't select 1. Yeah, you can. But please note one thing. You can also select 1 as a composite number. If I'm not wrong, just check once. Given the condition, as I remember, this program that was asked, they particularly gave a condition that 1 can also be selected. That's why I'm just going through this. I still haven't written the whole question, I think. Yeah, I've just written it in short. I'll go through all of these. Yes, 1 is neither prime nor composite. Absolutely correct. 1 is neither prime nor composite. That is absolutely correct. But this program, we were able to select 1 as far as I remember. I will add one test case at a time instead of explaining all of it right away. So in this case, if you don't consider 1, let's forget that. Because it's neither prime nor composite. Then you'll only get 1 over here. I have one question. Why 4 is not composite? 4 is composite, but is it in Fibonacci series? You need to follow two conditions. All the numbers in this array, you need to check whether they are composite and whether they are a part of Fibonacci series as well. If it is composite as well as a part of Fibonacci series, only then you check, only then you select that number in the new array. Is that clear? Only then you're printing it on the screen. That's the idea. So here 4 is composite, but it's not a Fibonacci number. 8 is composite, it's a Fibonacci series as well. 5 is in Fibonacci series, but it's not composite. So both conditions must fit. Is that clear? At Anu's question, I hope that is clear. So this is exactly what we are supposed to do here. So let us try this out. Now, to solve this, let me ask you guys a couple of questions. First, let's remove all of this. None of this we need. And since we need prime as well for this, I'm just going to take the previous prime function, whatever we have done as it is, copy and paste it here. I'm not going to make any modification. We found this. So I have one question. We need to find nth element of full series. See, they will give you the array. You are supposed to find which elements of these arrays are composite and they fall in Fibonacci series as well. This is not find nth number of series or anything. This is an array that is input. In this array, you need to find whether each element is composite as well as whether it fits in Fibonacci series. If both, only then you print that. You need to do this for every element in this array. Is that clear? At Aravindan's question. I hope that is clear. You have understood the question now. It's not about finding nth element of series or anything. I hope that's clear. So you can let me know by a comment followed by this. So with this idea, let us go on to our function and let's try to figure out how exactly we're going to do this. So in this case, let's start with the very basics, guys. So what is the first thing I'm supposed to do? What logic would you follow? Can you guys tell me at least one or two steps? What number of steps should I follow? So I have one question. Yes, this array is the input. This is your input. Input has, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements. And in this array, we're supposed to do this work. So please hold on for just 1 minute, guys. So sorry for the slight delay, guys. I hope you guys are able to hear me and observe this properly. So let's go ahead and try to work through this. Now here, if this is clear, what is the first step we're supposed to do? We're supposed to check if each number and see if it is prime. We need to check if it is prime. If it is not prime, then we can get to know it is composite. So let's take 8. We need to check if it is prime or not. It should not be prime. When it is not prime, we get to know we can use it. And second condition, we need to check if that number is also in Fibonacci series or not. We need to make sure it is not, it is in Fibonacci series. Now for this, if you guys remember, to find whether this is in Fibonacci series or not, I need to start generating Fibonacci series 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so on until I reach this number or higher than this number. If it is 7, if this is 7, then I've reached a value higher than this before, so it should not be selected. If I have 8 here, I've found this element exactly, so I have selected it as well. So that is how I get it. Can I create a function to check, a function to generate Fibonacci series first? So if a given number input n is given, we need to create a function which generates Fibonacci series. After generating Fibonacci series till a value, till this value, if this value is available in this Fibonacci series, then it should return 1. If it is not available, it should return 0. Can I do this? For this, I need to call this function. For this, I need to call this function. For this also, I need to call this function. So we need to call for each element this function where we need to create Fibonacci series up to length 4 and see whether it is there or not. Now there's one problem here. If I'm creating Fibonacci series for each element, think of this, guys. I'm creating Fibonacci series for 8 also, for 5 also. Don't they have same values up to 5? They have same values, right? Instead of calculating Fibonacci series again and again and again, there's a better way to do that. Think of this, guys. Let me explain this to you guys. If I want to check whether a number is Fibonacci series or not, if I want to check nth Fibonacci series, how do I do that? If I need to check fifth Fibonacci number, what I do is I add it as Fibonacci of fourth plus Fibonacci of third. I hope everyone knows this logic because we only store first and second value. First Fibonacci number is 0, second Fibonacci number is 1. Apart from this, everything else we don't know. So fifth Fibonacci number, we calculate it as Fibonacci of 4 plus 3. Fourth Fibonacci number, we calculate as Fibonacci of 3 plus Fibonacci of 2. Then third, let's again calculate as Fibonacci of second number. Yes, recursion, Fibonacci of 1. So second number, Fibonacci of first plus Fibonacci of zeroth number. So sorry guys, zeroth number is 0, first number is 1. Please note this. You can state it like this. So Fibonacci of 3 again, Fibonacci of 2 plus Fibonacci of 1. Fibonacci of 2 will again be Fibonacci of 1 plus Fibonacci of 0. So 1 and 0 we have, the rest only we don't have, so we need to keep on calculating like this. So now in this, let me ask you guys one very simple question. How many times are we calculating Fibonacci of 3? Fibonacci of 3. How many times are we calculating it? Observe here guys. Once, twice. Fibonacci of 2, how many times are we calculating it? Once, twice, thrice. Because even this will be divided to Fibonacci of 1 plus 0. Aren't we repeating steps? Aren't we repeating steps a lot? Doesn't that take more time and more memory to solve? So our program is not efficient. Your program is not efficient if you're doing the same thing over and over again, which gives you the exact same result. In that case, it is not efficient in any way whatsoever. So we need to find a way where if Fibonacci's third number is calculated, it's only calculated once, not more than once at all. So what we're going to do for this is, as some of you stated, we're going to try figuring out using dynamic programming. Dynamic programming is a concept where you need to do each unique step. I'll just state it in short. Each unique step will be performed only once. That is called dynamic programming. Each unique step is performed only once. So what I'm going to do here is, if I need to find, yes, memoization method, absolutely correct, as one of you stated. You can follow memoization or tabulation, up to you. We'll follow memoization because that's easier for this purpose. So I'm not going to go into detail what is memoization, tabulation, and everything. Let's just try to solve this as quickly as possible. So I'm going to take an array. In that array, I will only store first two elements. First two elements will be 0 and 1. If I want to find Fibonacci series up to 8, remember guys, our array is 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's say this is our array, 5, 6, 7, 8. We need to find composite and Fibonacci series numbers here. Now, which is the maximum value? 8. So can I calculate at once Fibonacci series till 8? Because I can find out whether 2 is a part of it, 3 is a part of it, 4 is a part of it, 5 is a part of it, 6 is a part of it, 7 is a part of it. I can search it right here. So can I directly create Fibonacci series until 8? This is index 0, index 1. For every other index, what we'll do is we'll add two previous values. Index 2 will be index 1 plus 0, that is 1. Index 3 will be index 2 plus 1, that is 2. Index 4 will be index 2 plus 3, that is 3. Index 5 will be 3 plus 4, that is 5. Index 6 will be 3 plus 5, that is 8. So this value we have obtained right here, which is supposed to be the maximum value. So our idea is you need to find the max value in the entire array, in the entire input array. Once you have found the max value of the entire input array, you need to create a Fibonacci series up to the max value. Once you create this Fibonacci series up to the max value, you can search if this number, is it prime? Yes, then no need to check in Fibonacci series. Is this prime? Yes, no need to check in Fibonacci series. Is this prime? No. So let's check in Fibonacci series. It's not there. So let's skip it. Is it prime? Yes. Is this prime? No. Check in Fibonacci series. It's not there. Is this prime? Yes. Then no need to check in Fibonacci series. Is this prime? Yes. No need. Then, sorry, this is not prime. So let's check in Fibonacci series. It is there. So this is a composite Fibonacci series, number as 8. That is the idea. Is this logic clear, guys? So I have one question. If max value is not there, okay, let's take max value as 9. So if max value is 9, after 8 we may get 9 as well. So let's add these two values, get the next value. 5 plus 8 gives us 13. We have reached more than this. So since we have reached one value more than this, let's stop right here, because this max value is not there. We have reached one value higher than it. No need to create more values ahead of this. I hope that is clear. So all you need to do is just create this series once. Once you have created this series, you can easily solve the rest. Now, let me ask you guys one question. Do we know how many values we are supposed to create? Do we know how many values we are supposed to store in this array? Once you find the maximum value, after you find the maximum value, will you know how many values you need to store in an array? Can we initially get to know? Can we initially get to know that I need to store exactly 6 elements or exactly 10 elements? Or do we get to know after adding elements, after keeping on adding elements? Do we get to know later on? We need to keep on adding until we reach this max element or one value more than it at maximum. We will not know how many elements that will be there until we populate this. Until we create this, we won't know. Yes, you can create a dynamic array. Dynamically, you can allocate memory, but you will not know what is the size of this array until you create it. So, in short, you may need to create an array of 1,000 elements initially, or depending on what is the maximum value. If maximum value is something like 100, you may need to create something like 100 by 2 at maximum. So 50 elements you can create or something like this, because you will not know exactly how many elements to create. If you dynamically allocate elements, you may have to extend array later on. We don't need to do that manually. We don't need to do that. If you want automatically the compiler to do it, as one of you stated, you can use the concept of vector in C++, or you can also use the concept of maps if you want, or you can also use the concept of set if you want. You can use any of these concepts. That's completely up to you. That is all there. But since we are working in C, we're just going to create an array. For those who want to work it in C++, my suggestion is just try searching for CPP reference. Just search for vector. CPP reference is a good website. If you just search for vector here, you will get to know what is a vector. Sorry, here the header vector. So you guys get to know what are the functions it has, how it works, and everything. There's all functions are explained here in detail. You guys can get to know how to work through all of these. So this is something that's really good to work with if you're interested in learning this. So apart from CPP reference, there's one more thing called C++ as well, um, which is a really good website for you to look at all the functions of anything. This is a really good website if you guys are interested in it. If you want to search for some function like how to add an element, just look at what is pushed back. You will see the example with all the details. This is a really good website. So for Java, you have your Java Oracle documentation. That's the best one that I would suggest. So my simple question to you guys is, now that we know the logic to solve this, can I give you guys one small assignment question before tomorrow? For Python, you don't even have to worry. You can just add it in a list. List is expandable. You can just add it in a list, not a problem. Or if you really want to save memory, you can use NumPy array. But then again, NumPy arrays won't be usable in interviews because that's a separate package, separate library. So you just have to use list basically. So I hope that is clear. So can I give you guys one small assignment for today before we start with tomorrow? That assignment is create an array of Fibonacci elements without recursion until max element. So I've received one, which is best website for Python. Python, I don't suggest a best website because each package has a different website. You don't generally have anything I would suggest like that. Yes, in Java you can also do it with array list. Can I give this one thing as assignment to you guys? If you guys are able to try this out, we can immediately finish this program within 5 minutes tomorrow. And once this is done, there's only one or two more small programs that I'll go for whose logic are very different. After that, we can go for strings. I will list out websites where you can get more and more programs after this. I'll list out all the websites now where you can get more and more programs that you guys can practice in your own time. So I have one question: will max element be given as input? See, max element itself will not be given as input. You will get the array in which you need to find maximum element. So all I want you guys to do is, given a maximum element as input, just create an array of Fibonacci elements without recursion until that maximum element. Just do this one. We will use this concept to solve this problem tomorrow. Can you guys just do this one part of the problem? We have learned how to do this. I want you guys to just give it a try. Now, since many of you guys have asked which websites to go for programs, here's what I would suggest. One of them is Sand Foundry programs. Just search for Sand Foundry programs. I have one question. I'm from electrical background. Can I use C to solve this? Yes. See, guys, you have 1,000 C programs and everything. There are C programming examples. There are a lot of programs in this, like programs, examples on strings, on matrices. You guys can go through all of this. There are so many of them. To go through them, you're gonna need like months together. So this is one website that I would prefer. I'll share all of them, not to worry. So yeah, there are a lot of ads in many websites. That's how they earn money, basically. So this is one website that I would suggest. And you have CodeChef practice problems as well. In CodeChef, you have a lot of different difficulties: beginner, easy, medium, hard, challenge, peer. Don't go through all these others. Go for beginners to begin with. Beginners itself will be a kind of complicated one. Take this for instance: reverse the number. Or reverse the number is easy. Let's too easy. Let's take something else like the lead game or lead game. I'm not sure what exactly it is. So if you guys open this link, you guys will see okay, it's lead game. Then all right, you guys can see the question, what will be the kind of input, what will be the kind of output. Here's how the input will be, here's how the output will be. You guys will get to see the whole question. You guys can try it out. If you're unable to figure out, you can see successful submissions here and view them to see how quickly someone is able to find the solution using code. You guys can try to understand and work through this. So this is how you can basically try to figure out. So this is an easy way to try these programs out. So if you are unable to find it, just open the solution, try to go through it, trace it out. You guys can easily find it out. This is one website that I would suggest. Apart from this, other websites that I would suggest, there are a lot of them. There is Lead Code, which has really good programs. There is Hacker Rank, which has amazing programs as well. There's Hacker Earth, which has its own set of section of programs. Then there is Geeks for Geeks, which has a lot of programs as well. But apart from this, there are a lot of other websites as well. Where you guys can find lots and lots of programs. There is modification programs. I'm not talking about basic programs. I'm talking about modification programs. As one of you stated, interview it. There are so many. These are the common ones that I'm suggesting, but a lot of them you guys can try these out. I'll share this link to you guys. And as the assignment that I've given for you guys, please make sure you guys try this out, because we're going to solve the current problem based on this. And we'll go for the end of math problems tomorrow, and hopefully begin string programs tomorrow, where you guys will expect a lot of string programs that we can try sorting out. So I have one more question. Is there any website having inbuilt compiler? There's so many. You can even download a compiler. I would always prefer an offline compiler so that you can work through without worries. That's the best thing I would suggest. So I have one more question. Share yesterday's link. You have lost that. Not to worry. Every day's content, whatever I'm sharing, it also has previous day's content as well. The link that I've shared today also has yesterday's content as well. So you can access both right here in one link. So please go through this. Please go through the assignment as well, guys. And we'll try to go through this. I have one more question. Please provide sample questions for Coding Wipro as PDF. All right, I'll try to compile some and I'll share it. Not a problem. I'll make sure in the coming sessions I'll do that. So please work on this assignment problem, guys. And along with assignment problem, one more suggestion that I will give for everyone, especially for non-IT students, please also make sure you guys learn basic concepts about strings, how to do reversal of strings, how to find palindrome and everything, how to do all these basic things, so that when we go for complicated programs that are asked in interviews, you guys can find it easy. And these programs I'm suggesting because they are in lab manuals. So for all non-IT students, please go through these before the next session. We'll start them up. So I have one of you stating, please share link for downloading offline compiler. Just search for code blocks online, or just search for Turbo C Windows version online. You'll get lots of links directly that you can use. Thanks a lot for the nice feedback by Alekia and Chaitra and everyone. That's really, really glad to hear that. And we'll catch up in the next session. I'll share the link again for those who haven't received it for today's and yesterday's content. It has a link of all of these as well as the assignments. Please work on them. We'll go through more complicated programs in the next session. And again, once again, happy new year, guys, and have a good time. Let's catch up in the next session.